I'm Khyra Steiner, and you're listening to Elaborate with K. Elaborate with K. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Elaborate with K. So today's episode is going to be about code switching. I've gotten some requests to do this episode, and I definitely think it's important and fits in the theme with this podcast. So I'm going to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get started. So to start off, for those of you that don't know, code switching is essentially the phenomena of changing someone's language dialect, actions, demeanor, and just general way of expression and movement, self-movement, to fit into a group of people in a social environment. And this is the definition that I got directly off of Google. But yeah, so let's talk about it. So personally, I went to a predominantly white school from 7th grade through 12th grade. And then now I'm in college. I'm in my senior year of college, and I'm also at a PWI, predominantly white institution. And, code switching has definitely been a part of my life. And I think that, it's a big part of life for us, specifically a lot of Black and like people of color and just people that aren't in the majority in a group. And so you've probably heard of it referenced in, it goes down to phone calls and just how you talk to people on the phone. Your voice changes octaves. It sounds completely different than how you might talk to your family, or how you talk to your family is going to differ from how you talk to your friends or how you talk to your coworkers, your classmates, your teachers, your teammates, your kids, all of that. And it's very different. And there's definitely a difference between like the respect level that you're going to give, to adults versus your peers or children, and the way that you're speaking in that way versus the way that a Black person might speak to their friends that, come from a similar background or they grew up similarly versus, talking to my classmates at my PWI. Like, it's going to be very different. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But the whole idea, or the whole thing with code switching, is kind of, the goal of it is to fit in and to be viewed in a more positive and quote unquote acceptable way, I think. I think that, it's this crazy thing, and for a lot of people it honestly happens it's very innate. Like, you don't even think about it, you kind of just do it. And I don't know, like, I think for me specifically, like, growing up in, or going to a predominantly white school I started when I was 11, right, in 7th grade. And so from the time that I was 11 until the time that I was 17, I was at this school where the population of the school was predominantly white people. And, those specifically, like, middle and high school years are kind of your main developmental years. And I think that kind of has a lot to do with the code switching, as well as it kind of becomes a little bit ingrained in you. So for example, like, I've had people tell me that I talk like a white girl, or, I have like the quote unquote like Valley girl accent a little bit. And people have come up to me and talked to me, and they're like, "Where are you from? Like, where did you grow up? Where are you from?" Just because of like the dialect or the way that I speak, because that was kind of I essentially what I grew up around. I was 11 when I started there, but 11 to 17 is where you do a lot of your main growth, and that's kind of where you start learning about the world and things around you. And so I think that definitely plays a huge part. And I think for me, code switching is definitely it is a thing. And I think that it becomes, as a black person, specifically as a black person who has been around a lot of white people and been in a lot of white spaces, it becomes something that you automatically turn on and turn off, and you kind of know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. Um, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I think it's not always, it shouldn't be looked at as something that's inauthentic, because I think there is still a way to be authentic while also being this different version, because you're a different version of yourself, essentially. So even now, like the way that I'm going to interact with a group of my white friends from high school is going to be differently than the way that I'm going to interact with um my cousins, or with a group of my black friends from high school or my black friends from college. And it also, I think a big part of it too is the things that you're speaking about and experiences that you can and can't relate to, and then also the way that you are bringing things up. I think so for example, like I my when I was in high school, I had a group of friends, a group of my like black girl friends, and that was truly like a life-changing experience. It was a really, really welcome and honestly a great thing to have in high school at a PWI, especially when we were going through COVID and everything. Like we would have group FaceTimes all the time, and it's so comforting and nice to have a group of people that can share in your experience and like have experienced the exact same things that you have, with pretty much like the same people we were on in high school. So, we knew all the same people, we had some of the same professors. And so getting to kind of connect with those people and like have that shared experience is really great and is super helpful. And we would have discussions on like colorism or things that we were learning in like history classes and just things going on in the world. And you, like the way that, you're speaking about it, you can speak more candidly about it and more like, I don't know, it's just a different way of speaking about it versus if you're having a conversation with like your classmates or your peers or a group of people that don't share in that experience. You're going to approach the topic differently, and you kind of have to take it from the point of view, like you're trying to explain it or describe it in a way that's going to make sense to someone who hasn't had that experience. You have to take in metaphors and kind of find balancing situations, examples, experiences, and figuring out new ways for it to connect, which is a really interesting thing. It feels more, I feel like, specifically too, if you're talking more about like discussions or world issues or things that have to do with the Black experience, if I'm talking about it with, other Black people, for the Black Student Union, if we're having a discussion about it, it feels more like a laid back conversation. Obviously it can still be structured and it can still have opinions and, disagreements are, it's all part of life, but it can still be like a very structured thing of like, okay, well, I would like to piggyback or I would like to agree. But the environment itself also just feels a lot more relaxed compared to, I feel like, having a discussion with people that don't share that experience and aren't experiencing it firsthand or don't fully know the extent of the impact that certain actions have on you or certain experiences and all of that. Like it's going to be a very different thing in a very different environment. And you're going to approach it differently. I'm going to do a little more, you might do a little more explaining or just talking about it in a way that is going to make sense. Like it feels a lot more, you have to be a lot more conscious of it. And I think that's kind of a big part of code switching. Same thing with, I feel like code switching can be compared to a dress code, right? So if you're going to a really nice restaurant, you're going to dress differently. You might put on some heels, a nicer outfit, make sure that your hair looks a little done, maybe you put on some makeup, maybe you sprayed extra nice perfume, right? And like you're going to hold yourself and appear differently than you would, for example, if you were going to, say, McDonald's, right? Like if you're going to McDonald's, you're not necessarily going to go dressed in like black tie wedding attire with your hair all done nice and professionally and like your makeup done. I mean, you might, but that's not the expectation. The expectation, McDonald's is very casual. It's a very casual environment. It's very laid back. It's not super, the same thing with like you're gonna wear something different to a football game than you are to a school dance or an awards show or a gala, or you might wear something different to a work dinner than you would to dinner with your friends or dinner at your parents' house. And, kind of appealing and trying to fit into the expectation of that space, of that restaurant space, the event space, whatever. That's kind of the same thing as code switching, is you're trying to fit in and make yourself more appealing to that environment. And it's the thing about code switching is it's kind of an important thing for people to have, because as much as we can say, we've grown so much from um all of the black history, black traumas, like we are no longer, slavery is no longer a thing. It has been abolished, and we have passed the point of legal segregation, and schools are integrated now. And the fact that I'm able to be able to go to a PWI is kind of a big, big, crazy accomplishment that they were fighting for, honestly, like not that long ago. But the reality of it is, yes, we have made these strides, but equality and, being looked at as an equal and on an even equal playing field is still not the reality. And so the reason for code switching is because Black people are still looked at differently than other races. If I walk into an all white room, you can feel the difference, right? Like I can feel an energy shift. I'm conscious and I'm aware of the fact that I am different from the other people in this room, and I can't read their minds, but I'm sure that they are also conscious of it, and it's a crazy thing to think about, because at the end of the day, we are all just people. Like all of our blood is still going to bleed red. We all have the eyeballs, hair, skin, like internally, it's not different. But code switching is a thing because, that equality and that total equal rights and just everything is not on a level playing field, and Black people have the experience, and you kind of learn from a very, very young age that you're going to have to work harder to get to what you want, to get to the same point as your white counterpart. You are going to have to go the extra mile, go the extra 3 miles. You're going to have to work a lot harder to maybe get those same opportunities or to be looked at the same way. And even once you get to that point, if you get to a position of power, there is still a lot more scrutiny and just a lot more opinions that you have to deal with at that point, because we are still hitting a lot of firsts, and I feel like that's scary for a lot of people. Well, like this is new and this is different, and there are still so many positions of power that we have never seen a Black person be able to be in or be able to hold. And so in order to actually get to that point, as like code switching is kind of a way to secure your spot, and it's kind of a way of like, it's code switching is in a way the way to make yourself, it's supposed to make you more appealing to the larger group and the group that you are going to be socially surrounded by, going to be in. I'm sure that there is a lot of code switching that comes with interviews, especially, like having to do interviews and make sure that you are speaking correctly, and the whole thing with people talking about Black people being like, oh, they speak so eloquently, and sounding surprised, or like, all of that, where it's like we're still just people too, but having to go that extra mile. In the end of the day, like, yes, it's all the microaggressions, like, oh, you're pretty for a black girl, or oh, you speak so well for a black girl or for a black person. Like, that's a really, that's not something nice. That's not something that you want to hear. It's like, okay, I speak well. That doesn't have anything to do with my race. That's just, you know? Um, so yeah, but the thing with code switching is that, like, as much as it is trying to conform, at the end of the day, it's kind of the thing of like, in a lot of situations, it's a necessary tool in order to get what you want or what you feel like you deserve or what you should be getting, honestly. Um, it's a constant, forever battle that we're going through. And, it's been the thing since the beginning of time. And I'm sure it dates back far, far further than we can even count. But it is a thing. And I think that, it's something that you become conscious of, and you become conscious of it at some points, but I think it's so ingrained in us, in Black people, that you do it oftentimes without thinking about it. And that's a crazy thing to think about, just how much we are changing and conforming to fit in, just to try to get to reach the same place as other people. And so this is an ongoing topic of discussion. It's forever going to be a thing, and it's not something that you can just talk about for 20-30 minutes and have encompassed everything that has to do with code switching and identity and appealing and all of that. So this is probably a topic that will be revisited in a future episode for sure, but this was kind of my preliminary, just like, thought process, thinking of it, things that I wanted to get out and say. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the episode, that you either were able to learn something more about the Black experience, or, that you were able to connect and kind of hear that you are not alone in, just all of working so much harder and all of the things. But yes, thank you so much for listening and or watching, and I'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye. And yeah, talk to you next Sunday.